Close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself this: who would you be if no one was watching? If every title you've earned, every role you've played, every story you've told about yourself suddenly dissolved, what would remain? We spend our entire lives collecting names for ourselves. Son, daughter, student, professional, partner, parent. Success, failure. The one who has it all together. The one who's still figuring it out. We wear these labels like armor. We introduce ourselves with them. We defend them. We build entire identities around them, brick by brick, until we forget there was ever anything underneath. And then one day, something shifts. Maybe it's a quiet moment alone. Maybe it's a loss that strips you bare. Maybe it's just exhaustion, the kind that comes from trying to be so many things to so many people that you've forgotten who you actually are. You look in the mirror and realize, I don't recognize this person. Not because you've changed, but because you've finally stopped performing. The roles you've played so convincingly begin to feel like costumes that no longer fit. The stories you've told about who you are start to sound hollow, rehearsed like lines from a script you never agreed to memorize. And in that unraveling, there's a question that won't leave you alone. Beneath all of this, who am I really? Here's what the mystics understood that we've forgotten. You are not your labels. You are not your achievements or your failures. You are not your past or your future. You are not the opinions others have formed of you, nor the identity you've constructed to protect yourself from their judgment. These are not who you are. They are simply what you've carried. Think of it this way. A river does not become the debris it carries downstream. The water flows on, clear and constant, while leaves and branches drift through it. The river remains itself fluid, formless, endlessly moving. You are that river. The labels, the roles, the identities, they are the debris. They pass through you. They float on your surface, but they are not you. Yet we cling to them as if letting go would mean ceasing to exist. We hold tight to our titles because we believe they give us substance. We defend our stories because we think they give us meaning. We attach ourselves to our roles because, without them, we fear we'd be nothing. But here's the paradox. The more tightly you grip your labels, the less of yourself remains. Every identity you adopt is a boundary you draw. Every role you play is a limitation you accept. Every story you tell about who you are is a prison you build with your own words. I am someone who always. I am the kind of person who never. I am defined by what I've done, what I've lost, what I've become. These sentences feel like truth, but they are cages disguised as clarity. The Sufis speak of fana, the annihilation of the false self. Not death, but dissolution. The dropping away of everything constructed, everything borrowed, everything performed. What remains when the labels fall away is not emptiness, it is vastness. So let me ask you something. What would happen if, just for today, you stopped introducing yourself with your titles? Not to others, but to yourself. What if you didn't define yourself by your job, your relationship status, your past mistakes, your future ambitions? What if you sat in silence and let all those identities rest for a moment? You don't have to abandon them forever. You don't have to quit your job or leave your life behind. You simply have to stop believing that these things are who you are. Because here's the truth. You existed before you had a name. You will exist after every role you play has ended. There is something in you that has been watching your entire life unfold, something steady, something aware, something that has never changed, even as everything around you has. That witnessing presence is closer to your true nature than any label could ever be. Try this. Sit quietly. Close your eyes. And instead of thinking about who you are, simply notice that you are aware. You are aware of your thoughts. You are aware of your feelings. You are aware of the stories running through your mind. But you are not those thoughts. You are not those feelings. You are not those stories. You are the space in which they arise. That space, that awareness cannot be labeled. It cannot be defined. It cannot be captured in words. And yet, it is the most real thing about you. So here's what I want you to remember. You are not the sum of your accomplishments. You are not the weight of your failures. You are not the roles you've played or the masks you've worn. You are the quiet underneath all of it. The stillness that remains when the noise fades. The presence that exists whether you succeed or fail, whether you're loved or forgotten, whether you're everything or nothing at all. What remains when all your labels fall away is not emptiness. It is you. And that has always been enough. But if we are not our labels, why do they feel so real? Why does it hurt so much when someone challenges the identity we've built? Why do we defend our self-image as if our very survival depends on it? Because we've been taught to believe that who we are is something fixed, something solid, something that can be defined and defended. But what if that belief itself is the source of all our suffering? Think about the last time someone criticized you. Not your work, not your actions. You. Maybe they questioned your character. Maybe they dismissed your worth. Maybe they simply didn't see you the way you see yourself. And something inside you reacted. Not just with hurt, but with a desperate need to prove them wrong. To reassert who you are. To defend the identity they dared to challenge. Why? Because we believe our identity is us. We believe that if someone attacks our self-image, they're attacking our very existence. But here's what's actually happening. You're not defending yourself. You're defending a story about who you think you are. A story you've been telling for so long that you've forgotten it's just a narrative, not a fact. And the moment that story is threatened, you panic. Because if the story isn't true, then who are you? This is the trap. We build an identity, and then we spend the rest of our lives trying to maintain it. We filter every experience through the lens of that identity. We accept the things that confirm it and reject the things that challenge it. We become prisoners of our own self-concept. The Buddha said something that most people misunderstand. There is no self. People hear that and think it means they don't exist. That life is meaningless. That nothing matters. But that's not what it means at all. What the Buddha was pointing to is this: there is no fixed self, no solid, unchanging entity that you can point to and say, this is me. You are not a thing. You are a process. You are not a noun. You are a verb. Think about it. Every cell in your body has been replaced multiple times since you were born. Your thoughts change moment to moment. Your beliefs evolve. Your emotions rise and fall like waves. So where is this that you're so desperately trying to protect? It's not in your body that's always changing. It's not in your mind that's always shifting. It's not in your memories. Those are constantly being rewritten. The self you're defending is a construct, a mental image, a collection of thoughts about yourself that you've mistaken for yourself. And the more you cling to that image, the more you suffer. Because life doesn't care about your self-image. Life keeps moving, keeps changing, keeps dismantling everything you try to hold on to. The job you defined yourself by ends. The relationship you built your identity around dissolves. The version of yourself you were so proud of becomes outdated, irrelevant, left behind. And every time that happens, you feel like you're dying, but you're not dying. Your idea of yourself is dying, and that's not the same thing. So, what would it feel like to stop clinging? Not to give up, not to become passive, but to simply stop identifying so strongly with the ever-changing contents of your life. What if you could hold your identity lightly, like water in an open palm? What if you could let yourself be one thing today and something else tomorrow without feeling like you've betrayed yourself? What if you could allow others to see you differently than you see yourself without needing to correct them? This is not about becoming spineless or losing your values. It's about recognizing that you are not your self-concept. You can still have preferences. You can still have boundaries. You can still show up fully in the world. But you stop believing that you are the person showing up. You start to see yourself as the awareness behind that person, the space in which all versions of yourself arise and dissolve, and from that space you become fluid, adaptable, free. Here's a practice. The next time someone says something about you that doesn't match your self-image, whether it's praise or criticism, pause. Don't defend. Don't deny. Just notice the reaction happening inside you. Notice how desperately your mind wants to correct the narrative. How urgently it wants to reassert control over the story. And then ask yourself, what if I didn't need to do that? What if I could just let their perception be their perception, without making it mean something about who I am? What if I could be misunderstood and still be okay? That's freedom, not because you stop caring, but because you stop confusing other people's stories about you with the truth of your existence. You are not solid. You are not fixed. You are not the single, unchanging entity you've been taught to believe you are. You are movement. You are flow. You are a continuous unfolding that cannot be captured in a single definition. And the moment you stop trying to freeze yourself in place, you will finally know what it means to be alive, not as a role, not as a label, not as a story, but as the quiet, boundless awareness that watches it all unfold. That is what you are, and it has never needed defending. But let's be honest. If holding on to our labels causes so much suffering, why do we do it? Why do we cling to identities that limit us, stories that imprison us, roles that exhaust us? Because underneath all of it, there's something we're terrified to face. Here's the question no one wants to ask. What are we really afraid of when we imagine letting go of who we think we are? It's not just the loss of identity. It's deeper than that. It's the fear that if we strip away all the labels, all the accomplishments, all the roles we've played, there might be nothing underneath, that we might discover we're not special, not valuable, not worthy of love or belonging. That the reason we've been clinging so tightly to our constructed self is because Without it, we're just empty. This is the unspoken terror at the heart of the human condition. We build elaborate identities not because we love them, but because we're afraid of what we'd find without them. We perform for others, not because it brings us joy, but because we're desperate for confirmation that we matter. We defend our self-image not because it's true, but because we believe it's the only thing keeping us from dissolving into insignificance. And so we hold on. We hold on so tightly that our hands cramp. We hold on until we can barely breathe. We hold on even when the weight of maintaining becomes heavier than the fear of letting go. But here's what the great teachers have tried to tell us across every tradition, every century, every language. You are not afraid of being nothing. You are afraid of discovering you were never a thing to begin with. Let me explain. When the mystics speak of emptiness, they're not talking about a void. They're not talking about meaninglessness or worthlessness. They're talking about spaciousness. The emptiness they describe is not the absence of something. It's the presence of everything unlimited, unbounded, infinite. Think of the sky. Is the sky empty because it has no solid form? Or is it full of light, of air, of space for clouds and stars and birds to move freely? You are like the sky. When you let go of your labels, you don't become nothing. You become space itself, the open awareness in which all of life can arise and pass away without resistance. But we've been conditioned to believe that value comes from solidity, from having a firm identity, from being somebody. We've been taught that to be empty is to be worthless. And so we spend our lives filling ourselves up with achievements, with possessions, with relationships, with stories about who we are and what we've done. We pack ourselves so full that there's no room left to breathe. And then we wonder why we feel suffocated. The Zen masters have a saying, empty your cup. Not because what's in the cup is bad, but because as long as the cup is full, nothing new can enter. As long as you're clinging to a fixed identity, you cannot grow. You cannot change. You cannot discover what else you might be. Your labels become the ceiling of your potential. So here's the invitation. What if the emptiness you're afraid of is actually the freedom you've been longing for? What if letting go of your labels doesn't make you smaller, it makes you limitless? What if the nothing underneath all your armor is actually the vast aware presence that has been you all along? Try this experiment. Sit quietly and imagine removing one label at a time, not literally quitting your job or leaving your family, just mentally setting aside the identity for a moment. I am a professional. Set it aside. I am a parent. Set it aside. I am successful. Set it aside. I am struggling. Set it aside. Keep going. Strip away every role, every story, every definition. And then notice, are you still here? Of course you are. The awareness that's watching this process, that's still present, that hasn't gone anywhere. That awareness doesn't need a label to exist. It doesn't need accomplishments to matter. It doesn't need validation to be whole. It simply is. And it has always been enough. The fear you've been running from your entire life, the fear of being nothing dissolves the moment you realize that the nothing is actually everything. It's the ground of being itself. It's the silent presence that holds all of life without grasping. It's what you are when you stop pretending to be anything at all. You were never meant to be solid. You were never meant to freeze yourself into a single story and defend it until the day you die. You were meant to flow, to change, to let go and become anew over and over again. The emptiness you fear is not a curse. It is the very thing that makes transformation possible. So stop filling yourself up with labels that don't fit. Stop defending an identity that was never really you. Let yourself be empty. Let yourself be space. And watch what emerges when you finally stop trying to be something and simply allow yourself to be. So we've dismantled the labels. We've questioned the identity. We've faced the fear of emptiness. Now comes the most important question of all. What actually remains? When everything false has been stripped away, what's left? There's a moment that comes for everyone on this path. A moment when you've done the work. When you've let go of the stories. When you've stopped clinging to who you thought you were. And you stand there, naked and undefended, and you realize, I'm still here. Not as a role, not as a title, not as a story, just here. Aware, present, alive. And for the first time, maybe ever, you're not trying to be anything other than what you are. This is the moment the whole journey has been leading toward. Not to some grand realization. Not to enlightenment in the way you imagined it. Not to a new, better identity to replace the old one, but to this. The simple, quiet recognition that you exist, and that is enough. What remains when all your labels fall away is not a thing. It's not an object you can point to. It's not even something you can fully describe. What remains is being itself. Pure, unconditioned awareness. The sense of I am without any attachment to what follows. Not I am successful or I am struggling. Not I am worthy or I am broken. Just I am. This is what the mystics have been trying to point toward for thousands of years. Ramana Maharshi called it the self. The Sufis called it the beloved. The Buddhists called it Buddha, nature. The Christians called it the kingdom of heaven within. Different words, same truth. There is something in you that has never been touched by suffering. Something that has never been diminished by failure. Something that has never needed validation or approval or achievement to exist. It is the part of you that has been watching your entire life unfold from behind your eyes. It doesn't judge. It doesn't resist. It doesn't cling. It simply is. And it has always been whole. Alan Watts used to say, you are the universe experiencing itself, not a separate fragment, not an isolated individual fighting for survival in a hostile world, but the entire cosmos. Looking out through these eyes, feeling through this heart, experiencing what it's like to be human. When you realize this, really realize it, everything changes. Not because your circumstances change, but because the one experiencing those circumstances is no longer at war with them. You stop needing life to be different in order to feel okay. You stop needing yourself to be different in order to feel worthy. You stop needing others to see you a certain way in order to feel valuable. Because you finally touched the part of yourself that was never broken to begin with. So how do you live from this place? Not in some distant future when you've figured it all out, but right now, today. Here's the secret. You don't need to become anything. You just need to stop pretending you're not already whole. Every morning, before you put on your roles for the day, before you become the professional, the parent, the partner, The person trying to hold it all together, take a moment to remember. I am not these roles. I am the awareness experiencing them. Every time you feel yourself clinging to an identity, pause and ask, who would I be without this story? Not as a way to abandon responsibility, but as a way to remember that you are larger than any single story about yourself. Every time you feel diminished by failure or inflated by success, come back to this. I am neither my accomplishments nor my mistakes. I am the presence that witnesses both. This is not bypassing. This is not spiritual escapism. This is coming home to the only stable ground that has ever existed. And from that ground, you can still engage fully with life. You can still care deeply. You can still work hard, love fiercely, create boldly. But you do it all from a place of wholeness, not lack, from fullness, not hunger, from being, not becoming. So here's what I want to leave you with. You've spent your whole life trying to become someone, trying to prove your worth, trying to earn your place, trying to construct an identity solid enough to withstand the chaos of existence. But you were never meant to be solid. You were meant to be like water flowing, adapting, reflecting the light of whatever moment you find yourself in. What remains when all your labels fall away is not emptiness. It is the vast, luminous presence that you have always been. It is the awareness that was there before your first thought. It is the stillness that will remain after your last breath. It is the part of you that has never been born and can never die. And it has been waiting patiently your entire life for you to stop running and finally come home. You are not your name. You are not your past. You are not your roles or your achievements or your failures. You are the quiet awareness underneath all of it. And that has always been enough. So let the labels fall. Let the stories dissolve. Let the armor drop and see what remains. You'll find it's everything you've ever needed. What remains when all your labels fall away? You do. Whole, complete. Enough.